When you think of Dracula, what's the first thing you picture? Probably a vampire king who rules the night, is crazy thirsty for blood, and lives in a giant spooky castle. Some shadowy dude who can control bats and turn people into vampires. That's the Dracula we've all seen in movies for over 100 years. But what if I told you the most famous vampire in history wasn't a vampire at all? Seriously, he wasn't even a count, and his castle wasn't in Transylvania. His real story is an insane mix of war, politics, and a level of cruelty that is somehow 100 times more terrifying than any vampire legend. Before the fangs and the cape, there was a man, a 15th century prince, a hero to his people, and an unbelievably brutal warlord to his enemies. This is the insane true story of how that man, Vlad III of Wallachia, was twisted by centuries of rumors and fiction into the global horror icon we call Dracula. To get to the bottom of Dracula, our story starts on a 15th century battlefield, not in a creepy castle. We're in a place called Wallachia, modern-day Romania, and it was stuck in a massive tug of war. To the east, the giant Ottoman Empire was pushing into Europe. To the west, the Christian kingdoms of Hungary were trying to stop them. Wallachia was the front line. Into this insane world, around 1431, Vlad III was born. He was born in Transylvania, but he was destined to rule Wallachia. And the name Dracula, he wasn't born with it. His dad, Vlad II, was in a secret club for knights called the Order of the Dragon, created to fight the Ottoman Empire. For joining, they called him Dracul, which is Romanian for dragon. That made his son, Vlad III, Dracula, the son of the dragon. Here's the crazy part. Today, that same word in Romanian can also mean the devil, a perfect and creepy prediction of what he would become. But Vlad's childhood was nuts. To keep his throne, his own dad made a deal with the Ottoman Sultan. In 1442, he literally handed over his two sons, Vlad and his little brother Radu, as political hostages to prove his loyalty. For years, Vlad lived in the enemy's court. It was like a luxury prison where he saw how powerful and ruthless the empire he was supposed to be allied with really was. This is where he learned about psychological warfare, including the exact method that would make him infamous. While his brother actually started to like the Ottoman lifestyle, Vlad just got more and more angry. He learned a lesson he literally wrote down himself. When a man or a prince is strong and powerful, he can make peace as he wants to. But when he is weak, a stronger one will come and do what he wants to him. And then, the worst thing imaginable happened. In 1447, he got word that his father was betrayed and murdered by his own nobles, and his older brother was tortured and buried alive. Suddenly, Vlad was an orphan and an exile, and the throne he was meant to inherit was covered in his family's blood. This wasn't politics anymore. It was personal, and he was already planning his insane revenge. In 1456, Vlad finally seizes the throne of Wallachia. He comes back to a kingdom in total chaos, run by the same treacherous nobles who had murdered his family. Vlad knew he couldn't just be a ruler. He had to be a dominator. He had to create an order so terrifying that nobody would ever even think about betraying him again. His revenge started with one of the most chilling power plays in history. During an Easter feast, he invited hundreds of these nobles and all their families to his court. As soon as the party was over, his soldiers surrounded them. It was a trap. The older nobles were marched outside the city and impaled on giant, sharpened wooden stakes. The younger, healthier ones were forced to march 50 miles and rebuild a ruined castle with their bare hands. Almost none of them survived. With one single brutal move, Vlad wiped out the entire old guard and sent a message: betrayal will cost you everything. And with that, Vlad Dracula got a new name: Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler. He didn't invent impalement, but he turned it into a horrifying masterpiece. It was his signature move, designed for maximum terror. Victims were slowly lowered onto thick, oiled stakes so that it would miss their vital organs and make them suffer for hours, sometimes even days. Vlad used this method to declare war on all crime and corruption. And here is where the man and the myth start to get blurry. Legends say he left a solid gold cup next to a public fountain, and for years, no one dared to steal it. Another insane story says he invited all the poor and sick people in his kingdom to a huge feast, then locked the doors and burned them all alive, claiming he was solving poverty. His cruelty was calculated, designed to purify his country with fear. Stories spread that he boiled people alive and nailed turbans to the heads of Ottoman messengers who wouldn't take them off in his presence. Even though a lot of these stories were probably propaganda, his reputation for being brutal was 100% real. The numbers are debated, but historians estimate Vlad was responsible for the deaths of 40,000 to 100,000 people. He was solving all of Wallachia's problems with pure, unbelievable terror. While Vlad was building his kingdom of terror, the man who used to be his captor, Sultan Mehmed II, did the impossible. In 1453, he conquered Constantinople, ending the Byzantine Empire. The Ottoman army seemed unstoppable, and Wallachia was its next target. For a few years, Vlad played nice and paid the Sultan a tax, but he was just buying time. In 1459, he made his move. He refused to pay, captured the Sultan's messengers, and had every single one of them impaled. Then he launched a surprise attack on Ottoman territory, burning and killing tens of thousands of people. He even wrote a letter to the King of Hungary, bragging about it and sending him sacks full of noses and ears as proof. Mehmed the Conqueror was furious. In the summer of 1462, he led a massive army, maybe 3 times bigger than Vlad's, into Wallachia to crush him for good. Facing an impossible fight, Vlad used the only things he had left: his land and his terrifying reputation. He burned his own country, poisoning wells and destroying crops to starve the massive invading army. He launched a non-stop guerrilla war, using the forests to stage lightning-fast attacks before disappearing. His craziest move was the night attack, where he and his best soldiers, dressed up as the enemy, snuck into the Sultan's main camp and tried to assassinate Mehmed in his sleep. They didn't find the Sultan, but the attack caused absolute chaos. But Vlad's ultimate masterpiece of terror was still coming. As the exhausted Ottoman army marched toward his capital, Targovishte, they saw something straight out of a nightmare. For miles outside the city, there was a grotesque forest of the impaled. On thousands of stakes were the rotting bodies of 20,000 captured Turkish soldiers. The sight was so disgusting that even Mehmed the Conqueror, a man who lived for war, reportedly retreated in horror, saying he could never defeat a man who did things like that. Even though the Ottomans eventually put Vlad's brother on the throne, Vlad's insane defense had made him a legend. To the Turks, he was the Impaler Lord, but to many in Europe, he was a savage hero. To this day, many Romanians don't see Vlad as a monster, but as a brutal national hero who did what was necessary to save his people. But you can't build a kingdom on terror alone. His brother outplayed him politically, and his Christian allies abandoned him, so Vlad fled to Hungary to get help. Instead of being welcomed as a hero, he was arrested for treason on fake charges. Vlad the Impaler, the guy who terrified the entire Ottoman Empire, spent the next 12 years in a Hungarian prison. And while the man Vlad was locked away, the monster Vlad was being born, all thanks to a brand new technology: the printing press. His enemies, especially German merchants who hated him for destroying their trade routes, started a massive smear campaign. They printed pamphlets filled with insane, over-the-top, and mostly fake stories of his cruelty. These were like the viral clickbait of the 15th century. They didn't portray him as a desperate warlord. They painted him as a sadistic psycho who killed for fun. These stories completely ignored the reasons for his actions, leaving only the image of a diabolical monster. After he was finally released, Vlad made one last attempt to get his throne back in 1476, but his time was over. He was killed in battle within months. The stories of his death are all different, but most agree on one insane detail. His head was cut off, preserved in honey, and sent to Sultan Mehmed in Constantinople as the ultimate proof that the Impaler Lord was finally dead. The real Vlad was gone, but the legend, supercharged by the printing press, was just getting started. The historical Vlad was dead, but his monster caricature was alive and well, waiting for someone to make him even more terrifying. Now, fast forward 400 years. The memory of the real prince is almost completely gone. Then, in the 1890s, an Irish author named Bram Stoker starts researching a new horror novel. Stoker was a hardcore researcher, and he was working on a vampire story. And get this, his villain's original name was Count Vampire. Can you believe how lame that sounds? But while he was researching, he found a history book about Wallachia. A tiny footnote caught his eye. It mentioned a 15th century warlord named Dracula and explained that in the local language, the name meant devil. The name was perfect. It was menacing, exotic, and powerful. Stoker immediately stole it, along with a few other tiny historical details. He knew Dracula fought the Turks, and he even has his count mentioned in the novel, but that's literally where the connection ends. Bram Stoker probably knew almost nothing about the real bloody story of Vlad's life. The Easter feast, the forest of the impaled, none of it. He just found a terrifying name and a reputation for cruelty that gave his fictional monster the perfect thin historical backstory. Everything else, the fangs, the immortality, the fear of garlic and sunlight, shape-shifting into a bat, that was all made up by Stoker. He took European vampire folklore and mixed it with his own Gothic imagination. His novel, Dracula, published in 1897, wasn't an instant bestseller, but people loved its unbelievably creepy atmosphere. Stoker took the name of a real warlord who was already turned into a monster by propaganda and fused it with the supernatural vampire. He completed the transformation. The flesh and blood Prince of Wallachia was now and forever the undead king of the vampires. So, the Dracula we know isn't really one person. He's the ghost of a 15th century prince, filtered through centuries of propaganda, folklore, and one writer's genius. The journey starts with Vlad III, a real guy in a violent time. To his people, he was a protector. To his enemies, he was a monster. His death led to a second life, where the printing press turned him into a fairy tale villain. And finally, 400 years later, an Irish writer gave that monster its final immortal form, Count Dracula. The true evolution of Dracula isn't about a man becoming a vampire. It's about how one man's horrifying real-life actions made him the perfect vessel for one of the most powerful myths in history. If you enjoyed this insane trip through history, make sure you subscribe and like the video, and let us know in the comments. Where do you think the line is between a national hero and a monster? We can't wait to explore more of history's craziest figures with you.